Hi, my name is Caci. I'm NYASP's legislative co-chair. I'm also a practicing school psychologist in the Newburgh and Large City School District. I currently work at the elementary level, and I've been practicing as a school psychologist for 19 years. I've also been a NYASP board member for 18 years. I'm here to talk to you today about a multi-tiered system of supports for suicide prevention. I think this is a really important topic and one that school psychologists are really primed to address in terms of a multi-tiered system supports, given our availability in schools to meet the emotional and behavioral needs of kids in our school buildings. In terms of developing a multi-tiered system of supports in relation to suicide prevention, at the Tier 1 level, I think probably the most important piece of intervening is really through training and education. And that really looks like doing staff trainings, making teachers and other school staff aware of suicide risks and red flags so that staff members are able to identify if any of their students are demonstrating any of these red flags. And so they could intervene in terms of getting supports for the students by identifying a child at risk. I think at the Tier 1 level too, it's important to train students when it's developmentally appropriate. So providing students at the secondary level, middle school, high school, with the tools to identify when to recognize red flags in their friends, in their students in their grade levels or what have you, so that when kids talk to each other, which they do, and when friends hear other friends saying things that might be a student who is in need of support, they can gain the support of an adult in the building by sharing that information so that a student can receive intervention. So I think probably at the Tier 1, the most important piece is training and education so that educators and students, when it's developmentally appropriate, know how to recognize the red flags and then act on them as necessary in terms of seeking help from a supportive adult. At the Tier 2 level, you might do some more targeted interventions with students in terms of screening populations of kids, whether it's a universal screening or it's a screening of kids who are at risk for suicide for some reason. A good tool to use is the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, which is free. And that helps, gauge risk factors and assess suicidal ideation in students. It's important, I think, to really focus on this as a mental health provider, given the fact that we can prevent suicide if we are able to recognize those risk factors. At the Tier 2 level, if we do recognize a student who is in need of support, school is a great place to be able to implement that support for a student through whether it's counseling in school, whether it's setting up a supportive network in the building, in addition to reaching out to outside supports for the student outside of school. At the Tier 3 level, if we've identified a student who is potentially suicidal, obviously we need to assess lethality. And again, as a school psychologist, we're primed to be able to do that, understanding mental health issues. We are trained, to identify and intervene when students are at risk for suicide. And so obviously we're looking at the lethality. We're, determining if there have been prior attempts, if a student has a plan, student has access to implementing the plan. And at the Tier 3 level, obviously, we're going to be taking action in terms of reaching out to the parents, identifying what treatment options are necessary in the moment and ongoing, whether the child needs a hospitalization, whether or not they have access to outside therapy that might be available immediately in an emergency. But again, this is a really important topic for school psychologists. We're really on the front line in terms of providing services to kids, in terms of identifying suicidal ideation and really intervening. so that we can prevent suicides from occurring. NYASP has developed a suicide prevention and response toolkit, which is available on our website, and that can help you provide, a framework for your school. It gives you a lot of tools in terms of developing some framework of suicide education, prevention, and then in the unfortunate circumstance that your school has to respond to a suicide, there are also tools and resources in that toolkit to help guide you in terms of responding to a suicide. I think that creating a multi-tiered system of supports for suicide prevention in your schools is really, really important, given that we are able to intervene and prevent suicides from occurring when we are able to recognize a student at risk. So this is a really important topic and something that we need to focus on so that a student has access to these supports once they're identified in school. And we have a framework that educators, teachers, staff members, as well as we, school psychologists, and other pupil personnel providers can work within that framework to provide the best care for students at risk. If you need help in developing a multi-tiered system of supports in relation to suicide prevention, please feel free to email me. My email is on the NYASP website. Thank you.